Thank you so much. We made it to the end of the day, yes. So now I have to tell you my side of that story. So when you write a book, you never know what's going to happen. I was very excited. You know, I'm watching Amazon and click, there's the first sale. Oh, my mom bought it, yes. And then there was this all these sales in Denmark. I was, what is going on with that? It's a small country. And then I got this, someone cared about someone read it, Oli and Jenny. I got this Facebook thing, and Facebook was new to me, and I was trying to be, my kids were coaching me on how to use it. Don't respond too fast, that'll seem too eager. And so we had a great conversation, and they invited me to a thing called Agile Camp in Denmark, Agile Camp, Coach Camp, Agile Coach Camp, ACC, Agile Coach Camp. I had no idea what I was getting into. Now, in the military, it's a pretty structured environment, and I go to this Agile Coach Camp, and it's one of these unconference things. And I'm sitting there like, what is going on here? And people were putting stickies up on the wall and moving things around. And I put a sticky up and then someone else moved it. Like, what? Mind blown. So anyway, I was addicted. It was so much fun. It was so much unlike whatever I'd done before. So welcome, everyone, and thank you for your attention for the next few minutes. I'm going to make you honorary submariners. And what I hope to do is do a little bit of visual storytelling on the book, kind of where this idea, what motivated us, where this idea came from. We're going to have a little bit interactive experiments, and maybe a tool. And then we're going to go to the Hard Rock. And that's going to be it. So, honorary submariners. You need a place to sleep. So we're going to give you a bunk. We call it a rack. We have special code names for everything to confuse the enemy on a submarine. And a bunk is a rack, and here's your rack. Here's your pillow. These are the feet of the person in front of you. This is a torpedo. You are sleeping in the torpedo room because we don't have a lot of space. Now, if you happen to be prone to sleepwalking, it would be good to let us know. Some math for you. There are 117 racks on a submarine, but we're going to sea with 140 people. What does that mean? Sharing, yes, but not at the same time. Calm down. You can be on duty, and your bunkmate's in the rack, and we wake them up, and they relieve you, and then you can go down and you can get in the rack. But since this time to this time can be pretty short, when you get in the bunk, it's still warm from their body heat. Ew. Yeah, so we call this hot racking. Now, that's the word. Now, by the way, I'm the captain. I'm not hot racking, okay? You're all are hot racking. And this is what all your private space for 6 months is inside this little bunk, and everything that you need, you can bring whatever you want as long as it fits in that bunk pan that you're going to share with somebody else for 6 months. Once you get your stuff stowed, come on up to the mess decks where we have chow together. Chow is pretty good on a submarine. You get to know the other people on the ship, and generally one of the first questions that we ask when getting to know each other is, hey, where you're from, what's your hometown? And it's a very collegial and it's a fun place on the ship because everybody likes food. And see, we get to have fun. What are we doing here? Well, take a look at these juice dispensers because we're really doing this, and we're taking the submarine deep, and that's fun for us. Why not? And we have. This is where we cook our meals. It's called a galley, and there's only one, but there's 2 windows. And out one window we serve the crew, and out the other window we serve the officers and the captain. So everybody's food is better because as the captain, I would eat the same food as the crew. So that's your first leadership tip right there. Eat the food your crew eats. And here we're making hamburgers. Again, code word, we call them sliders. And it's one of the favorites of the crew. And I just bring this up because we're here in Hamburg. Obviously. And this is the officers' wardroom. This is where we would dine. This is where we'd have our training. This is where we'd watch movies. And this is where we would play poker on Saturday night, which was a tradition. And you could do a lot with sailors, but don't mess with their traditions. And the problem on a submarine is there's not a lot of space, as I said, and we have one nurse, we call a corpsman, who's the medical person for the whole ship. Not a doctor, but almost a doctor. Almost. And so the wardroom is the room that we use. It's our operating. It's the OR. It's our operating room. And when we go into combat, the corpsman sets the wardroom up as the operating room. Now, as you know, most medical procedures are better performed in a small team, but since we only have one corpsman, we have to get the chef to assist because he's the best with the knives. So you don't want to get sick. And if you don't believe anything I'm saying, there's a submarine down in the harbor in Hamburg here, and it's an old, not so old actually, Russian submarine, and you can go visit that and you'll see what it's like to be on a submarine. And we get to do this sometimes. No one was on that ship. No one was injured. And we get to so that's exciting. But in a way, what we do is very similar to what you do. In the most important thing that matters, which is humans do everything. Nothing happens without humans, and we work in teams. And in this way, I think what we do is very similar to what you do. And here's a team, and what we're doing here is we're bringing a special forces team onto the submarine. The submarines we're Uber for the special forces teams. Because when the special forces teams want to go someplace, they gotta get there like, Santa Fe, known for good conversation. Now, we'd rather just have the SEAL team with us. We'd rather just carry them with us because when we're near the enemy coast, it would be faster. We just launch them to do their thing. But the SEAL team said to the Navy, oh, these submarines, there's no exercise equipment. And my body deteriorating with every passing day. It's a toxic environment. This is how the SEALs talk. And the Navy agreed with them. And they said, okay, so what we'll do is we'll keep you ashore and you can work out 25 hours a day like you like to do. And then we'll send you at the last minute to the submarine. So we get notified. We have a SEAL operation, and we bring the ship away from the shore. We surface it, which we don't like because it makes us vulnerable. We open the hatch, send a team topside. This is me. This is one of my chiefs. That's the youngest kid on the crew. We say, go back there, and you got to hold on to that rope. And then the helicopter comes, and they drop that rope, and the team comes down. It's an 11-person team. It takes about 1 second per person, so 11 seconds. They come forward, go down the hatch, shut the hatch, submerge the ship. Sequencing is important right there. And then we go take them to do their thing. Now, for this person back here, life is moving very quickly because he's got a helicopter over his head, and bad things can happen. We're moving together, so if the wind shifts, the helicopter goes, the rope goes to the side, someone slips, they land on the deck hard, they hurt their leg, they bounce off the deck and go in the ocean, he goes in the ocean. So he's got to make all these decisions. What do I do? And if he tried to call me, oh, Captain, tell me what to do, it wouldn't work because this is how I see the thing. Yeah, I hope it works out for you. The helicopter shows up, I count to 11, it flies away. Now this is kind of scary. I have to tell you that you can feel the rotor wash, right? And those blades, I feel like they're like, I had a hard hat protecting my head. I want you to remember this picture, though, because for all of us, I think this picture is very relevant. Number one, we do work with distributed teams where we can't stand right behind the person and say, oh, yeah, no, add a closed parenthesis there. No, keep going. And number two, the degree to which we try and control them. All we're doing, even if we are successful, it's only in the most superficial part of their work. It's this part. And it's not this part, and it's not this part. And the degree to which we try and tell people what to do suppresses the flame, I think, that is potentially in all of us. We don't need to empower people. They already have power. We just need to get out of their way and provide the structure and the environment so they can be the best that they can be just the way they are. So, I hope today to do some interactive polling, and if you have a smartphone, now's the time to take it out. You don't need to download an app or log in to any software, but I use a subscription called Poll Everywhere. And to participate, I invite you to go to the URL, pollev.com/intent, intent for intent-based leadership. Now, we're going to start with a warm-up question. And the warm-up question is simply, where'd you come from? And here's the URL, pollev.com. Now, remember, there's a catch. The software, every time you put a space, it treats it as a different response. So if you come from New Space York, it'll be, so just do New York, no space. Okay, great. Hamburg, London, Zurich, Frankfurt, Karlsruhe, Bilbao, excuse my pronunciation, Potsdam, Brussels, what's so funny? Sydney, Sweden, not a city, but okay. Good. Identify at the country level. Got it. I like Montreal, Cologne, and Munich. Maybe they flew through Munich to get here. Sophia. All right, angry face. Got it. Okay, good. If you're having trouble, we're in a room of technical people, so... Okay, I want to tell you about a psychological phenomenon called overclaiming. Overclaiming is the tendency for humans in groups to claim more credit for a shared task than they deserve. And psychologists have known about this for a while, and the first studies happened back in the 70s in Canada, where they asked married couples, what percent of the household chores do you do? And they took the husband's number and the wife's number, and they added it up. And I'll give you a hint, it was more than 100. So, you're going to do this next activity in small groups. So I'm going to do two steps here. One, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to form up groups in your table, and then I'll tell you what the activity is. So, form up groups, nominally 4, sort of, 4 or 5 or so. Take 30 seconds. Introduce yourselves. If you don't know each other, take 30 seconds. Okay. All right. Here's your task. I want you to come up with one number as a group that is somehow some kind of consensus number for your group that represents what you think is the sum that the researchers found of the sum of the husband's number and the wife's number, and then one person per group will then pull it up. You have 75 seconds, go. Is that your number? Nice. I got to borrow this chair. Is that your number? All right, you're all ready to go. Okay, good. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, time's up. One person from each table. Whoop, 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 whoop. Whoa. All right, here we go. Send up your numbers. Okay. All right, very good. 200. That means both people said they did everything. All right. Yeah, okay, good. What the researchers found was about 130%. Yeah, all right. The group always gets it right. Now, here was the interesting thing. They asked the married couples, what percent of the arguments do you start? And what do you think happened? No, it turns out it was still overclaimed. Not as much as this, but it was still overclaimed. Why? Because here's what's happening. When we have to answer a question, like what percent of the household chores, or how much of the project are you responsible for, I can easily recall what I did, because I was there. I know what I did. I know how hard I worked. I know how diligent I was. I know the Saturday bike ride that I gave up so I could dedicate it to the project. Whatever it was, I don't know what you were doing, but I know what I was doing. And so our own efforts are more visible to us, whether they're good or bad. And so we therefore think, and it's not because we're evil, it's just that it's more readily accessible to our brain, so therefore we think we did more of it. And it's toxic in small groups or groups because let's say we have a 2-person team, sales team, they land a big project, there's a sales bonus, and we have to decide who gets which portion. And I'm thinking, well, I did 3/4 of the work, I should get 3/4 of the bonus, but we split the bonus 50-50. One, that seems unfair to me, as Jenny said, and then, why are you claiming you did 3/4 of the work? You're trying to steal my credit. But here's the reason I asked the question. It's because I'm really interested in how the groups answer that question. And, oh, by the way, these are the results. Your experience may vary, okay. And so I was with a big company last week. These people are making oodles of money. And I asked them the same thing, and they only had 10 executives at this event. And this is very typical of what we see. So the CEO, as soon as I said, you have 75 seconds, go, the CEO blurted out 125. And then his table came up with 125. And then what happened? Oh my God, the other table came up with 125. And then when I asked the other table first, there was only 2 tables, so we didn't do the polling. I just had them write it on a card, and hold it up. They held up a table 125. And the CEO was like, yeah. So what happens is I think there are two parts of this task. Part one is what does everybody think? And part two is now let's collapse it into a consensus number. Almost every group, scratch that, every group that I have seen has skipped part one and they go straight to part two. Someone anchors the group and say, hey, I think it's 140, 60, whatever it is. Then we argue plus or minus that number. Someone who thinks it's way different. Now, I'm interested in the 200 group because they went somehow way out. Who thinks it's way different might not even speak up because they know they're an outlier and they're likely not to get heard. And so my question is, why does it seem so natural to engage in the convergent part of the work, but not in the divergent part of the work? Because we know from science that groups will make better decisions if we have both parts of the work. Oh my gosh, who are these happy people? That's me, right there. This is the math team. We have these clubs in high school where it's for geeks and introverts to feel part of a team, okay? And we solve math problems against other schools. It's pretty fun. It's not really a spectator sport. There's not a lot of money in it, but that's where I was, on the math team and the chess team. Now, the 1970s was not a good time to be in the United States, especially to be in high school, at least for me. I mean, if you were keeping score, we were in this contest with the Soviet Union. The Vietnam War just wound down. East Germany, with a population 1/10 the United States, won more gold medals at the 1976 Olympics than the United States did. How shocking was that? And then Iran, a country no one ever heard of, had taken our hostages. We somehow couldn't get them back. And to make matters worse, we were making really crappy cars. This was the period of the Pinto, which if it got rear-ended, tended to explode. And the ugliest car ever conceived, the AMC Pacer. And I drove in one of the, it's another story. I drove all the way. So I'm an idealistic young person, and I believe in liberal democracy, and I'm a math geek. And I go home one day and I tell my mom, I'm going to do my part. I'm going to join the military. And she's like, can't you just be a scientist like your father? It's safe. Look at you. You're going to get beat up. And I was like, thanks for your confidence. But I read about these things called submarines. Their job, they hide from people. It's perfect. So I'm going to go be a submarine commander, whatever that is. And the Soviet Union's going to fold up shop. Okay, sounds improbable, but okay, So that's what I had no idea what I was getting into, zero. I went to the United States Naval Academy. It's a school that prides itself on turning out leaders. This is where the naval officers go. And they gave me this book. Leadership can be defined as directing the thoughts, plans, and actions of others so as to obtain and command their obedience, their confidence, their respect, and their loyal cooperation. And you know what's? I was actually really good at this. I was really good at this. I was really good at telling people what to do. And I would come in and to an organization and I would say, oh, that's screwed up, that's screwed up. Okay, stop doing that, don't do that. Why are you doing that? Were you thinking again? No, I'll do the thinking here. It'll be better for everybody. And then there'd be this blip and things would get better. Everybody hated me, and then when I left, they just went back. Even more proof of what a good leader I was. And the Navy was promoting me because of this behavior pattern. Now, I used to have a sexy job as a submarine commander, and I have a sexy job as a management consultant, which means I have to make 2x2 matrices. And my 2x2 matrix for leadership is to think about it in the following framework: knowing, not knowing, telling, and not telling. And so this is going to be another poll on your phone. I want you to think about that definition, and I want you to identify it's going to be a heat map. So you tap where you think, and where in this quadrant you think that model of leadership lands. We are all over the map. All right, so I'm curious about this because this is not what I expected. It looks really evenly distributed. Reframe the question? No, so the idea is, do you want to be knowing or do you want to know your job or not know your job? And do you want to tell people what to do or not tell them what to do? Like, where do you want to be as a leader? Which quadrant do you want your behaviors to be? Ah, okay. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that's an unexpected result. Yeah, I characterize it as way up here in the upper left. You want to really know your stuff because based on the definition, no one else is thinking, so you better know all the answers, and you got to give good orders. If you give a bad order, make a bad decision, then what you really need to be doing is do better decisions, right? That's the problem. Okay, so we're going to try again on this one later, so. Okay, so the Navy says, hey, great news, you're going to be a submarine commander. Woo, hey, Mom, guess what? I made it. And for 12 months, I studied to be the captain of this particular ship, the USS Olympia. It's a fine running warship out in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. I was very excited. Life was good, no worries. 2 weeks before I took over, my life was upended. There had been a drama playing out in the Navy, and it had to do with this ship, the USS Santa Fe. And the Santa Fe was the Enron of the submarine force. She had the twin problems of very low performance and very low morale. And when I say performance problems, the problems would manifest themselves in like small errors that the ship would make. Like they'd be loading a torpedo, and somehow a cable might get pinched, and it would scratch the torpedo, and we'd have to pull it out and send it back. Little things like that. But it turned out that all these problems stem from really people sort of reacting rather than being proactive. In other words, we waited too long to figure out that we needed to load torpedoes, and then we finally said load torpedoes. The team in the torpedo room felt rushed to get it done. So even though it manifested itself and we could blame the team for screwing up the procedure, the problem really started way back here. And here's the crew. Now on a submarine, there are 140 people. Submarines have women. The Santa Fe is a smaller ship, so we only had men in my case. But these are the officers, this is the crew, and these are the chiefs. And you see we wear different colored uniforms to identify the leaders from the followers. And we want to make sure no one is confused about whether they're a leader or a follower. Here I am. Now, so here, hold on. The problem is the Santa Fe is a different kind of submarine. Look at the sail. Look at this sail. The Santa Fe was one of the newest ships in the fleet. So now I don't know the ship. Okay, so what model of leadership do you think I'm about to practice? Take a guess. Yeah, good. Not knowing. Okay. These are the generous people. I appreciate that. Because it would make sense for me not to give orders, but that's not what happened. I went down like, this is the way it works. Captains give orders, you do what you're told. And we were both good with that. I mean, we just that's the pattern we fell into. So it all fell apart within 24 hours of getting underway. And I gave an order. This is the control room, and what we're doing is we're practicing shutting down the reactor. And when you shut down the reactor, the submarine runs off a battery, like a Prius. And we're driving an electric motor, and it's not much bigger than a Prius, so you don't really go that fast. And you have 2 speeds. All the older ships had 2 speeds, first gear, second gear. Santa Fe, newest ship in the fleet, only 1 speed. But I don't know that because I only had 2 weeks to take over, and that was one of 10 bajillion things I didn't learn about the ship. And so this sailor in front of him, he's got this knob that looks like this. You can see that's basically first gear, second gear. This is what you use for the reactor, red flank, surge through the ocean. But we shift to the electric motor. So this is the very first exercise. Now, I'm thinking, look, this is the worst performing crew in the fleet. We got to stress the crew and train hard. So we shut down the reactor. The engineers are running around taking voltage measurements, trying to find the problem. The officer who's in charge shifts to the electric motor like he's supposed to do. First gear on the electric motor, saving the battery, drawing as little current as possible, extending the time for the engineers to find the problem. Everything's going fine. And then I start thinking, well, I need to put some stress on my team because they're the worst performing crew in the Navy. And that's what we do to the worst performing crew. We add stress. No, I meant motivate, but whatever. So I look at him. His name is Bill Green, and he's been the navigator on the ship for over 2 years. I say, hey, Bill, why don't we speed up to second gear and draw more current, drain the battery faster, reduce the amount of time that the engineers will have, and they'll know that, put some stress, blah, blah, blah. And he orders it, second gear. And the sailor here did this. And I noticed that with silence. I noticed that. I said, hey, what's going on? How come no second gear on the... This little knob makes a bell sound, ching, ching, ching. I said, how come no ching, ching on the bell? He said, Captain, on the Santa Fe, it's a one-speed motor, just first gear. And it was like this flattest tone. Now I'm on the lookout for this tone now because this tone is the boss, you're an idiot tone. And I said, whoa, hey, that's good backup. Way to go, nice job. Bill, you've been to the Arabian Gulf and back. Did you possibly know about this second gear thing? And he said, yes, sir, I did. I was like, Bill, riddle me this. Why did you order it? You know what he said? Because they told me to, exactly. And my head went, because in the past, the solution to bad orders is better orders. But when you don't know 999,900 things out of a million, you can't do that. So I said, stop. Start the reactor up, because it was just a drill after all. Officers assembled. We went down to the wardroom. And I said, so here's what we're going to do. You're going to be proactive. You're going to speak up. You're going to take initiative. You're all empowered. And if I give a bad order, it's on you to tell me it. How's that? And it's a speech I'd heard 100 times. And I now know that I was basically, in the language of Chris, I wasn't taking responsibility for my behavior. And it took one of the officers to basically push it back in my face. He said, well, why don't we skip that part? What part is that? You know, the part where you give the bad order, we have to fix it. Let's skip the bad order part. Save everybody some time. Well, how's that going to work? He said, well, when you give an order, you never think it's bad. So the only way to get out of it is never give any orders. So I said, wait a minute, you want me to be the commanding officer who never gives any commands? And he was like, yeah. He was a millennial, so that's what you got. And I was like, well, And I thought about that. At first I thought, that's crazy. Like, have you seen any submarine movies? And then I thought, I think that's right. Because ultimately, I can only control myself. And what happens is if I'm telling everyone what to do and saying, oh, yeah, but then you guys fix it, I'm not taking responsibility for what I'm doing. And what I need to do is stop telling people what to do. So I said, okay, good. We'll do this. I will never give you guys another order. I will never issue a command on the submarine. But you have to stop waiting for me to tell you what to do. And what you're going to do is you're going to come to me and you say, I intend to blank. I will do my best to convey what we're trying to achieve without giving orders. And in the past, the captains would give all kinds of orders. Surface a ship, submerge a ship, load torpedoes, start the reactor. So I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to wait for you guys to come to me. And I'm going to lean back, and you're going to lean into me. And they're like, I said, well, how's that sound? Like, well, we don't know what that's going to look like, but it's better than dying, so let's try it. And we shook hands, and it was a deal. And we both failed. We both failed over and over again. I failed to not give orders, especially when I was tired, hungry, stressed, or if my boss yelled at me. Of course, I had to yell at my people. Everyone knows that works like that. And they failed to always come to me with intent. But we had that as a vision of where we were going. And it worked amazingly well. And soon a few of the officers were saying it to most of them, and then the chiefs were saying it to the officers, and then enlist them into the chiefs to the officers. And it cascaded down through the ship. And what it does is it invites thinking, because now you have to think. Like when you say, this is what I intend to do, you have to figure it out. And you have ownership. And it invites feedback prior to the event, because we make these public statements. Hey, in 2 hours, I intend to load torpedoes. And anybody can say whatever they want. Great idea, bad idea. Oh, if you're going to do that, I need to do this other thing. And a year later, we got the highest score in the history of the Navy for operating the ship, the crew of the Santa Fe. I didn't fire a single person. People couldn't believe it. The other submarine captains, of course, were very happy for me. They called me up. Congratulations. Must have given some good orders. I was like, no, I tried this new thing. I didn't give any orders. What? It was so much fun. All right, so now I'm neither telling people what to do, nor do I know the ship. So let's try let's try this one. Yes. Yes. Yeah, see, if you haven't figured, good. I'm trying to tell a story here where I move like this around. Okay, good, yeah. So that's right. Now, this is not what I'm recommending for you. Okay, your boss will probably get frustrated if you stay in this quadrant too long, and you'll get fired. So fortunately, on a submarine, though, we were at sea, under the ocean, and there was no chance of my boss showing up, so I had a benefit that you didn't. We're loading a torpedo. We're in Sasebo, Japan. We're loading a torpedo. We made a mistake, and we almost hurt somebody. Fortunately, we didn't. And I was rocked back on my heels. And by this point, though, a lot of good things were happening. The performance was going up. Morale was going up too. Over the next 12 months, in the previous 12 months before I got there, it was only 3 sailors out of 33 signed up to stay in the Navy. But in the next 12 months, every single one did, 33 out of 33. So we were having morale and performance was going up. So things felt good, but we were still making mistakes. And I think what happened was I had given too much control. It was untethered. It was not anchored to anything. And I talked to the team, and they said, well, I think we're missing, you're giving us the ability to make decisions, Captain, but if we don't have the technical competence, like running a reactor, there's science. You just got to know it. You can't fake it. And clarity is, what are we trying to do? So this is make it right. To paraphrase from John here, the last session, is make it right and make the right thing, or do the right thing. And so then, now we had a model. And my job was to tweak control, to try and keep giving more and more control. Stephen Covey came. It was an awesome visit. Author of 7 Habits, obviously. I was a huge fan. I got to spend 8 hours with him. He rode the ship. We submerged and did a bunch of things. And really unbelievable person. But he's kind of quiet initially, and I'm kind of worried, and he's looking around. And he finally comes up to me and he says, I know what's going on here. And he says, the most empowering workplace I've ever seen. Now, I didn't use the word. I just invited my people to say intent. I said, oh, that's good, Dr. Covey. We don't use the word empowerment here, but you can. And he said, yeah, I think what's happening is when people say, tell me what to do, nowhere on the ship does anyone answer that question. They say, what do you see? And then when they answer that question, they invite them to, what do you think? What would you like to do? What would you do if I weren't here? What do you intend to do? And we call this the ladder of leadership. And I say, yeah, I think that's right. And I have some of these cards up here, and I invite you at the end, if you're not too much of a rush to get to the Hard Rock, come on up, say hi, and we'll give you one of these cards. But the idea is leveling up. So the boss, it's too easy just to match the person. But we invite them. Now, with any invitation, they may not take it. We don't disparage that. We don't beat them on the head. We say, okay, fine, I'll tell you what to do this time, but just so you know, I'm going to be curious to see what you think next time. Now some people took 60 seconds to go from here to here. Some people, 60 days. But we would consistently invite them up. Another way to think about this, it's pause, rewind, forward. Pause, what's going on? Rewind, how did we get here? Forward, what should we do? And the reason it's in that order is because we're moving from safe to less safe, less ownership and engagement to more ownership engagement, less vulnerable to more vulnerable. Describing the as-is condition is the least vulnerable. It feels very safe to do that. It's the least vulnerable. So we start there and then we move up. And now I had a tool to tune competence and clarity with the language. I could dial it exactly where I wanted to. And I was inspired by Olga earlier today. Since I'm an engineer, I couldn't be outdone on the equations, so I had to add some equations. And control, how much control you get is a function of the competence, technical competence, organizational clarity, and Z. What's Z? We always give a little more control. Basically, all I did was I flipped the normal paradigm. Normally, it's like when you prove you're ready, I'll give you more authority. And what I did is I gave you more authority, and gave you the chance to prove you were ready. So Z is we always go up first. Leaders trust first. And Z, because one equation wasn't enough, is, I think, a function of the learning orientation in the organization times safety squared. Why squared? Because it's got to feel safe to the leaders to give control, and it's got to be safe to the team to take control. So that's say, and the bigger you can make that Z, the faster your organization will learn, and the faster they'll move up and to the right. All right, so here's another way of thinking about it: control, competence, clarity. So this is a 60-second activity in your groups. I want you to do a little diagnostic. So for example, see these question marks here? These question marks are, what do we see in an organization that has control and clarity but no competence? These question marks are, what do we see in an organization that has competence and clarity and no control? So take 60 seconds at your tables and see if you can come up with words for those three question marks. Ah! Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, time's up. All right, who wants to start us off? Let's start with this one down here. Who wants to start? Who wants to take it? stab at that. Anarchy? Okay, so this is a situation where the team has competence and clarity, but they don't have control. In other words, they don't have the ability to make decisions. Frustration. Change jobs. Yeah, there's a lot of people leaving because they're not fulfilled. And in the organization, what we see is just loosely characterized, we would call it inactivity. There's a bias for waiting to be told what to do. Things are slow and ponderous. Inactivity is the symptom. All right, so let's try this one here. So people have the ability to make decisions, and they're technically competent, but they're not really sure what we're trying to achieve. What do we see here? Chaos, yeah. We see projects that start, then they get canceled. We see a team working for a long time on something, and then they're totally redirected. So what we call this is misaligned activity. Things are happening, they just random arrows going in different directions. Now what about this one here? So we have the ability to make decisions. We understand what we're trying to do, but we're weak in our technical skills. I didn't hear. Exactly. Mistaken activity. We get recalls. We get low quality scores. We're on the phone apologizing to the customer all the time. So this is mistaken activity, misaligned activity, inactivity. So because when teams say they want to work on intent-based leadership, they want to say, hey, which one do I start with? And the idea here is if you can identify the worst symptom, it'll give you a clue probably as to where to go. So now for a poll, this is the first time I've asked this question. I'm just curious, what do you guys think when you think about the organization you work with most? Where would you place them on this? Oh, happy faith. All right, that's awesome. Let's just go to Hard Rock. We're done here. Now, okay, good. So it looks to me like clarity is the biggest gap because we have the most dots over here. I'll tell you it depends on the group, though. What I think sometimes happens is people externalize the problem. If we ask the problem the other way around and we just let them, because we used to just say, which of these three is the biggest problem, control, clarity, or competence? The people low in the organization, they sort of own competence, so they blame clarity. And the people high in the organization feel like they own clarity, so they blame competence, and that's not good. Okay, quick concept, power gradient. Power gradient is how much more important your boss is than you. Oh, no, we don't have that. Well, if it's too steep, you get problems because people won't speak up. Information flow is inversely proportional to the power gradient. I also personally believe totally flat is not good. That's stagnation. People are confused. They spend all their time trying to figure out what they're supposed to do. There's no structure. And I like to envision sort of a gently flowing river. That's the power gradient that you want. We were fighting fires here. We were not very good. We have nice fire exits on a submarine. 0 fire exits. If you don't put the fire out, you die. We call this motivation. We would do a drill, and we get together afterwards. We do our little retrospective. We say, how'd it go? And I heard this word, they. Well, they didn't hang up the gear. They didn't pressurize the hose. They didn't change the batteries in the thermal imager. I was like, wow, who is all this? I was very upset. I said, who's they? There's no they on Santa Fe. It rhymed. Very important. And you have to say the word we. Like we had all these departments and ranks, and everyone was in their own little tribe. We had a lot of they. And what happened was we started saying we. The engineer comes up to me the very next day, and I'm standing in the control room, and he wants to tell me that the supply department ordered the wrong part, so he couldn't fix the pump. And he says, the bad news, Captain. We ordered the wrong part. I look at him. Of course, I know what, it wasn't him personally, but, whatever, it doesn't matter. He starts walking backwards like, it was awesome. There's no blame, there's no recrimination. And so what happens is, with time, when I say the word we, it sends a signal to my brain, this person is in my tribe. And then my brain, over time, says, well, this person must be in my tribe, so I grow new synapses to wire my brain so that it feels like they're in my tribe. But it's the action of saying we that comes first. So this is why we say we act our way to new thinking. Leaders fix the environment, not people. Now we're going to go into a really fun activity, and we're going to do it a little speedy so that we can get to the Hard Rock on time. But the point is, the environment has a big impact, and the leaders are responsible for the environment on people's behavior. And there was a study done. This was in Princeton University at a seminary school, and this is called the Good Samaritan Study. And what they did was they invited people in to go give a talk on the Bible story, the Good Samaritan. And since it's seminary school, of course, a bunch signed up. And they came into an office one at a time, and they said, hey, you got to go across campus to give a talk. But there was a change in instructions. 1/3 of the people were told, you have plenty of time. 1/3 of the people were told, you're just in time if you leave now. And 1/3 of the people were told, you're already late. Now, as they walked, the researchers had staged a person lying on the ground who was sort of coughing and having a seizure as these people walked by. And they walked around him. Sometimes they stepped over the person as they were going to give a talk on the Good Samaritan. The question the researchers were interested in was how did the change in instructions change the percentage of people who stopped and helped? Of the people who were told, you have plenty of time, that's the low rush group, 63% help. Of the people with just in time, 45% help. Now, I want you to imagine you're in the high rush group. You're told you're already late. First question, do you think you would help? All right, let's see. Oh, hold on. I'm not going to show you this yet. I want to ask this question first. This question is, and I'm going to give you 45 seconds to do this. You can talk about it in your groups and then answer. What do you think the study found for the group that was under a high rush? So the numbers were 63, 45, and then the question is, what happened next? So this was what happened in the study. Take 45 seconds and then go ahead and code up your answer. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Send up your answer. All right, so let's see what we got here. So first off, oh, look at that. Whoa. Okay. All right, good. So we have a bimodal distribution where we have some people said, no, it got better, but a whole bunch of people said, no, it got worse. More people said the number went down. So let's hear, so you want to hear from the outliers. Always hear from the minority first, because it's easier for the minority to speak before the majority speaks. So let's hear from someone who thinks the number went up. Oh, am I already late? Yeah, and now I have an excuse. Sorry I was late. Saved a person's life, right? Okay, good. What about going down? Let's defend that position. I didn't quite hear you. Say again. So there's a bystander effect because I'm on college campus. There's other people around, and it seems from the way the write-up is this, because this happened way back in the 60s. It seems like they were doing this path by themselves, and it's unclear to me whether there were other people around. But even if they didn't see other people, they knew there were other people around. Okay, good. That's one. What else? They didn't have time to think. Yes, key. Because what happens is when we put people under stress, and time pressure is a very simple way to put any group under stress, we push them out of the prefrontal cortex and they're back to their old reptile habits of self-preservation. And it also focuses our attention on getting our task done. And literally, some people at the end said, oh, where's the talk? Oh, there is no talk. We just wanted to know if you would help the person having the seizure. What person having a seizure? Some people, they didn't even see the person because they're so focused on the task. That's the impact of stress. And when as leaders, we put people under stress, then we see antisocial behavior because they're back in their reptile brains. And then we blame them, of course, but it's really us. Okay, so let's go back and see what you guys said for yourselves. All right. So you said, 71% of you said you'd help. But most of you said the seminary students wouldn't help. So the answer is 10%. Because this effect overrode that effect. Now, so the idea is leaders fix the environment. Now that we've done the training, 2 final polls. Now I want you to answer the question again. Again, you're in the high-risk group. Do you think you would stop and help the seizure victim? What do you think is going to happen? Is it going to go up, down, or stay the same? I'm very impressed. Most groups it has exactly 0 impact. They just say the same thing they said before. So thank you very much. Yes, thank you. Now, final question. Most fun question of the evening. If we ran the experiment on the people in this room, what % do you think would help? No, right now. I'll give you a hint. On the way to the Hard Rock, we have this experiment. And I'm keeping data. Yeah. All right, not bad. Good. So what really I'm looking for is there a consistency between what we say I would do and what I think the rest of the people in the room would do. And I will tell you, this is the most balanced I've ever seen it. So congratulations, give yourselves a hand. Most groups say, Well, I would help, but none of these people would help. Okay? So I made more slides than we need, apparently. I took this picture yesterday. I'm really sort of tickled with it. But here's the end of the story, is at the end of the day, yeah, we had a performance improvement, but when I left the ship continued to do well, and the officers and the sailors on the ship continued to do well. And the reason I wrote the book and wanted to tell the story is because 10 of the officers ultimately became submarine commanders, but that took 10 years to happen. And so when you're out there working with your teams, if you're like me, giving control feels unnatural. But you can practice it. The next 10 times you go out to eat at a restaurant, don't order. Turn to the server and say, you choose for me, and don't play it safe. Thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun.